Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Arsenty Kharitonov. I'm the producer of this channel, Violin Class. You're about to have a session with Professor Julia Bushkova. Make sure that you subscribe and like this video. It will help me for my future purposes with this channel and Professor Bushkova as well. And Julia, you're comfortable with everything?
I think so.
Do you want more light?
Well, for me, maybe not, but I'm not sure about
That's perfect.
Other people.
Okay, so enjoy your session. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. Whoever is here. Hello. You have a question. I have first question. Good. Is the thumb from the bow hand supposed to touch the hair of the bow? If yes, is it supposed to do so throughout the whole bowing movement? It's a good question. It really depends on how your hair of the bow is. So, hello, с Украины, привет. So if you are not tilting the hair, some people play without any tilt in the hair, like with flat hair. In that case, your thumb will not touch the hair of the bow at all. Okay, because this basically touching the hair pretty much is this. So this is flat hair and this is tilted bow. Okay, you probably can see it, right? So yes, since I'm playing with tilted bow, yes, my thumb touches the hair usually right at the frog or close to here, but it doesn't touch at the tip because I keep my hair actually somewhat tilted to the tip. And so therefore, no, with extension of the arm, it usually doesn't. It really shouldn't because it will be too much stress on the thumb. Okay. Hello. Hello, Mexico, Bolivia. A question: Do I have any everyday recommendations for control of the bow? Everyday recommendations for control of the bow. Well, practicing in front of the mirror for straight bow, really. If you're on that level of development when you do, but actually on any level of development, it's always good to check whether the bow is parallel to the bridge or not. So I would say, yeah, there's some, again, depending on what your situation with the right hand is. For instance, if your wrist, for instance, is not doing that motion, which is with the fingers, right, which is called reciprocal movement, reciprocal motion. If you watched my 2 last videos, and the hand specialist described it really nicely. So this is called reciprocal movement. And if the hand, your wrist is not doing it, then yeah, it's good to be doing something like, you can do it on a scale like, and so forth. Just work on that movement. You can play some bowings that maybe give you trouble, like martelé is a very good bowing to practice, and so on. So basically practicing your weak spots. So question, зажата правая рука, that is in Russian. So in English, it will be the right arm is tight, right hand or right arm is tight. Well, unfortunately, it's a big question. It depends where it is tight. Usually all the tightness in any hand, this hand or this hand, comes from fingers. Okay, so it usually is that the fingers are clutching the bow or holding too much and are not allowed to slightly slide, with a reciprocal movement. Of course, this movement is smaller at the tip and larger at the frog, obviously. But yeah, it usually comes from the fingers. So first thing is to let go of the hold with the finger. So fingers are resting on the bow. If that is the case, then at first you might feel like you have less control, which is kind of true because you're not grabbing, but then everything else goes from here up. Okay, so many teachers feel or think that it comes from here down. No, it really isn't, because we are dealing with fingers. On the bow are the fingers. So yeah, so that would be my response. Okay, let me see here. Somebody, Evan, is planning to come to UNT College of Music next year, hopefully. Is there any tips for auditioning, especially with the romantic era piece of music? Well, first of all, I'm glad that you're considering UNT. Looking forward to seeing you among the auditioning people. So basically, if you're planning to play a romantic concerto, choose the one that is suitable for your technical level. If you just have to know kind of where you are, that your teacher will obviously make suggestions and so on. So that's pretty much the main thing. It should be something, a romantic concerto or anything else that is on your technical level at this point, or at that point when you will start preparing audition. And auditions will be done without any accompaniment. So you need to be mentally prepared for that. Even your initial pre-screening tape will be, and so on. So, but for that, you can probably go just to our website. And since you will be auditioning there, I highly recommend you just write to me. Just write to me direct email, and I can answer more questions that way. Okay, Evan? All right, next question. I'm trying to play faster. Do you have any suggestion exercise I can do during daily practice? Just faster, like left hand faster? Is that the question? So if that's the question, first of all, again, we need to make sure that there is no excess tension in the hand. Okay, so that number one, actually, before any exercises, because if you start doing any exercises and meanwhile you have tension just in a basic motion, you will not be able to go much faster. Okay, so if your fingers move, you can do things like so right now I am checking the responses of each finger, that it comes off the string fast, because that's one of the very important things for articulation and just the speed as well. Then, of course, every teacher will recommend to beginners to do first the dotted rhythm. Why? Because it gives you opportunity to move fast on to one note or to the next note, and then rest a little bit. So your brain can actually process the movements of the fingers. Then if you do this, and I started with a long note, right, you have to reverse it. You know, like this, even though tune-wise it might be sounding a bit weird. Another thing is to do bursts. For instance, here, and you want to accelerate the tempo. Just let them fall. Like this. Then 4-note bursts. That could be helpful. And then there's a number of rhythms that you can do. Other rhythms. And the rhythms would be, for instance, tam, pam, pa, pa, pam, pam, pa, pa. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 3, 4 are fast. Then you do the middle notes, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you go with the first one, so 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are really good rhythms for everything. And then we also do the first one, the first rhythm, tam, pam, 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 you know, and we start with the second note of your passage, or passage meaning whatever line you want to accelerate, right? So, and I assume that is pure dexterity, pure just passage-like, scale-like, perhaps, or quasi-scale-like movement. And then you don't go with bum, bum, pa, pa, bum, bum, pa, pa, but only you start with the second note of your passage, okay? So that is for professionals. Advice for professionals is, if you're a beginner, you don't exactly know what I'm talking about, that's okay. Just do the first exercises. If you're a professional, then you will know, you know what I'm saying. Okay. Next, yes, and by the way, still about playing faster, always play this on the slur in the bow, always. Never try to do it on separate bows, because then you're overloading your brain with the idea that you need to take care of the left hand and the right hand. So at first you do it on the slur, just like I was showing, okay? So I hope it answers your question. Next one, for someone new to music, how would you recommend teaching the tempo? Teaching the tempo. You mean how to stay in one tempo? Or I'm not exactly sure what the question is. We don't really teach the tempo. We play in certain tempo. We explain how to gauge the tempi musically to our students. But so if you would please maybe clarify a little bit, I would appreciate it. And then I'll answer more. Hello from Caracas, Venezuela. Oh, it's a wonderful place. I loved my time in Caracas. That was really cool. What's the best way to teach the movement of the right arm and the student produce a good sound without noise at the frog of the bow? Okay, so do you mean the noise like scratching noise? Is that what it is? Like that kind of noise or some other kind of noise? If it's this one, then it means that the student allows to rest on the string, not only with the bow, but also with the weight of their hand in here. Because if it's on D string, you know, there will be the weight of the bow, which is quite great at the frog, and also actual weight of person's hand, right? So, and if elbow is low, then you will get more weight in here. And so basically you need to lift the weight at the frog. And for that, you might, even with beginning students, you might want to ask them to do just this, you know, very close to the string, mimicking exactly the bow movement, you know, like this, slowly. So going above the string, but exactly in the plane of the string, not like this somewhere or allowing the bow to wiggle, but just really controlling slow movement at the frog and then back. And actually, if your students already are familiar with this reciprocal movement, which we do to make the bow changes better, then even better if they can already do some of that while holding all the weight of the bow. Then you go on a string and you just say, okay, now go on a string and just allow one hair of the bow onto the string, and it's usually a very good result. Let me see. Oh, Artur, thank you so much. All right. Hello to Brazil. Next question, recommendations for how to cross strings with the wrist. You know, there I have the whole video about this, I believe. I do string crossings. So I would, Jason, I would really recommend to go there because I got there in a great detail, the string crossings. But, you know, just very quickly here, it's the string crossing movement is this. So basically, if one does, sorry, let me put it down. So if one does this, you can do a lot, but you won't need this. You will need very little if you play violin. So I always recommend to go from neutral. Now, this is what we call, the violin teachers call this neutral position. In fact, it is actually, well, anyway, let's not go there. So for violin, this is a neutral position. Okay, the wrist is flush with the forearm, and nothing is sticking out like this. So that's not neutral. This is neutral. All right. So to cross the strings, I find it's much easier to do it from upper string, higher sounding string, to the lower string doing this. Now you can also, of course, do it from lower sounding string to upper sounding string doing this. But that is a little bit less comfortable in feeling, because when you hold something, it's much more comfortable to hold the bow here when we're in neutral or in slightly flexed. When in this one, you see it wants to open, and then the hold becomes a little clunkier, less comfortable. So therefore, yeah, I would just go from that position and then go to the lower sounding string at the string crossing. I hope it's helpful. Okay. Are there any exercises to secure intonation? Oh, exercises. The whole life of ours is about securing intonation, my friend. Everything we do is about securing intonation. So in other words, you cannot do just something, just play, do some exercises for intonation and then just play whatever else. Now you constantly secure it. But specific exercises, I would say, that would be more likely scales and arpeggios. Yeah, arpeggios especially. Well, scales for the beginners, of course, will be really just scales, okay? And then beginner to intermediate, and then, of course, arpeggios also. So it would be checking, then going to one note, checking, maybe also like that. Then hearing that it's exactly whole step. For instance, like this. You see, that's my second finger is slightly flat, so I'm hearing the whole octave, and then I will be comparing that, and then I memorize where I put my fingers. So at first, really finding every note. Scale is good for that reason. So you check all perfect fourths and fifths if they're not the same finger, though, not with open string, and unisons. Yeah, and then those are your notes on which you can rely. And then you go with the next other notes intervallically. So you build the interval from one note to another note, and then you memorize how it sounds, and then you put finger back there again. So that's the best way to do it. All right. Next question. Second. Okay, Anthony. Hello, Anthony. How do you learn new music correctly and most efficiently? This is an excellent question. I assume that new music means not only maybe contemporary music, but just new to you, correct? Is that correct? It's like a new piece, right? So, which actually will be the same thing for everything. First, what you need to do is to study the score. If there is a score, we study the score. If it's not for violin solo, we have to study the score. It's very crucial. For instance, a sonata or a concerto, taking score, preferably the real score, if it's a concerto, orchestral score. But if that's not possible, or the person is not too developed, in sight reading, keys and so forth, clefs, then piano part. And then with that in your hands, you can actually go and listen to how other people play this piece and find out what's happening in there, where the orchestra has the lead, what harmonies they are. All of that is actually should be the first step of learning a new piece. Now, if it's for violin solo, I would probably do the same thing if recordings exist. If no recordings exist, which is also very good, then you actually study the score and you go for harmonic centers. You have to know basic harmony, or at least, basics of harmony, and hearing where the voices go, voice leading, and all that sort of thing. So first step, really, especially, I'm talking more, of course, about professional players, but not even just purely professional, pre-professional, or good middle, intermediate level players already can do it. Then next step would be playing the violin part. If it's higher level student, then they should really play by the score without any fingerings or bowings that the teacher has for them, which I'm assuming the teacher does, but they're not given right away. So again, the student kind of tries to do it in the score, relying on what they see is happening in other voices in that particular bar measure, so on. So if the student is younger, then of course we give them bowings and fingerings. We just give them part, and after they have listened to the piece, if that recordings exist, and then they are going to go and read. So I would suggest that to read the piece as much or as a whole thing if possible, maybe in slow tempo, but still first to get the whole scope of stuff, and then note what is hard technically and what is easier. And a lot of times what is easier, it's how it starts. Like, Wieniawski Concerto No. 2, for instance, it starts easier, much easier than what needs to be, will be later, right? So what people a lot of times do, oh, it's so nice, let me just play that beginning, and they work on the beginning and so on. And meanwhile, the hard parts, they recede. And then, of course, there will be more of a problem. So I suggest you go to the hard parts first, just technical parts. And I call them etudes. That will be your etude, this little section of the piece. And so they work on that. And then after that step, yes, now you can go to your themes, the slower themes that probably will be close to tempo. They don't need to be too slow. The other stuff needs to be as slow as necessary at first. Okay, so that's what I would recommend. And actually, that creates most efficiency in reaching the goal. Okay, and really fast people can do it all in one day upon training. All right, the real beginning of what Yankelevich then later was continuing very excellently. So what do I think of it? I think very highly of it. My teacher actually studied with Yampolsky himself. Yuri Yankelevich was older than my teacher, but they all are past. And my mother, who was a fantastic violinist, also studied with Yampolsky. So I was very fortunate that I was in that tradition, which is Yampolsky-Yankelevich tradition. Is the same. I just grew up in there. So yeah, I think very highly of it. In terms of the progression of the pieces, what to do, what you learn after which. You don't jump like this, or to a different piece that is out of your reach, or just explanations of the bowings and other things, and of course musical part is really important. And yeah, I think very highly of it. Okay, describe your process of learning any piece. Well, that's what I just said. I basically said working on Mozart Symphony No. 40. You mean working on the violin part, right? The first violin part. Yeah, go to the most difficult parts, and train them first for the left hand, so that your left hand knows where to be, what to do, from slower to accelerate to fast. And then if you also have a lot of screen crossings and stuff, so at first you do them on slurs, more slurs. Unless it's really awful to do it on slurs, then you can do them separate bows. It depends on in which part of that symphony you are. But yeah, there are some very tricky parts in late Mozart symphonies. Next question. Can you show for us where is the contact point to the clearest sound? Okay. Contact points for clear sound. Any contact point that we have on violin, I count them, as you probably know. If you're watching my videos, then you know that I go in a system of 5 contact points. Sometimes people ask me, could it be more? Yeah, it could be anything. It's really pretty kind of random division. I could have chosen 7. It would be an even number, though, because you want to have the one that is truly in the middle. And that's why it's either 5 or 7, but most people do 5. So clear sound. It depends on your speed of the bow and depends on the string on which you are. So you will get clear sound on A string and the contact point number 3 here. Here we go. This is number 3. I hope you can see it. So this way you can't quite see where I am, but you can trust me. So this is number 3. So it's exactly, so this is how, when my bow is not tilted, right, you can see it now. It's exactly in the middle between the bridge and the fingerboard. Okay, so that's our primary contact point when we're young and going through intermediate to advanced, towards advanced. We pretty much play with in contact point number 3 on strings like A and E and possibly D, but that already depends on how much well, I would say the word that people don't like these days, pressure, you would use in their index finger or leaning with the index finger. So D string is thicker and G is the thickest, right? So on them, we usually go slightly towards the fingerboard to produce the same clarity of tone. So for instance, on D here, if I want to be in mezzo forte, I would not be in contact point number 3. I will be probably in 3.5. okay, like this. So if I go on G string, I mean, the good contact point will be 3.5 or 4, okay? So that's pretty much. But the main thing is, first thing is to learn to move that bow parallel to the bridge, so that doesn't, do things like this, because if it does, we can't talk about contact points at all. I mean, it constantly slides away from the contact point, and that stuff is hard, really, for everybody. Okay, hope it's answered your question. All right, okay, my returning listener, just a second, I'll get back to your question. Okay. Hello from Medellin, Colombia. What do you think about modern music and their role of the violin in it? Oh, the role of violin in it. Modern music. Well, it's a very broad question, honestly. So it depends on what music. For instance, Arsenty Kharitonov, who is actually running my channel, is a fantastic composer who wrote a just phenomenally wonderful, I just cannot do more superlatives, violin concerto for me, and for anyone else who would play it, but it's a great piece, and the violin plays a huge role in it. It's a concerto for violin and orchestra. So, but if you're talking about some other music, the music that is sound like, that kind of music, I don't know. Sometimes the violin doesn't play a very good role in it. I mean, violin has to do some kind of noises, sounds, and not really sounds, basically sound effects, So yeah, people who specialize in playing that sort of music, well, they learn the sound effects and they do it. So I personally like when violin sings or speaks, or at least, pizzicato is fine, pops a little bit, but, I don't particularly love all the crazy sound effects sometimes. I mean, there's nice sound with some pieces for a little bit, of course. Sometimes it's a bit too much, but that's my opinion. All right. Hello, Giselle. How to strengthen the fourth finger vibrato. Okay. How to strengthen a fourth finger vibrato. My way with that fourth finger vibrato always was from the sound and by replacement. So, I mean, fourth finger is weak. We all know that it's weak. So if I want, for instance, to vibrate, that fourth finger, right? And let's say I don't get that kind of sound. I get something, so instead of going by motion, explaining to the student, like, okay, you have to move more that way or that way, I don't do it anymore. I tried to do it in the beginning of my teaching career, realized it's a long way that way, okay? So since we don't start vibrato very early anyway, we shouldn't anyhow, until one is perfectly good, solid in first position, and maybe even couple positions. We don't go to vibrato at all because we need to first center the intonation without any vibrato. Then we start in vibrato. So instead of going by the motion, that should be different from the other fingers, and it will be slightly different for most people, not for all, but for most. So I would go to the good finger vibrato. Let's say it's 3, usually better, or 2, and see how that vibrato sounds. Okay, so if it's 2, then I replace to 3, and I do the same sound. I ask the heavens, I guess, I ask, please give me the same sound. And then I go to the 4th, and I do exactly the same thing. I say, please give me the same sound. And of course, right now it sounds, oh my gosh, it's a miracle. But no, it wasn't a miracle like that right away. I could hear then, no, it doesn't sound that way. And then I will again go to a stronger finger and do vibrato, and then again go there. I need the same sound. I need the same sound. Give me the same sound. And it eventually does. And I actually didn't have a single case when it didn't, which is really remarkable. And what I found also with fourth finger vibrato is that for some people are really lucky, fortunate how it sits in the bass joint and how it goes here. Fantastic. Then they can do like proper vibrato. It's when all the all the knuckles are slightly vibrating. But for some people, like myself, for instance, it goes so much inward here that this movement is not possible. It's just not possible by the structure of the finger. So in that way, I vibrate more sideways in a way, like cellist towards there, But it doesn't matter. The sound is good, and that's what counts. So that's how I teach it. So, in your honest opinion, is it possible to learn violin only by watching videos? I don't know. I haven't met anybody who has, but maybe it's possible. Okay, well, more seriously, probably not. Well, I mean, you can learn probably if you're really gifted. You might be a really gifted person to this instrument. Okay, it can be. And even if you're an adult or if you're like an older teenager, let's say you started late, it's possible that somebody's just really gifted and they kind of get everything that they see and they hear, and they can repeat it. They get the instructions, understand them. Possible. But there will be always a point when you need to play for somebody, because to get better, you need to develop your ear better and better and better. And you have to have a feedback from somebody how it really sounds. Because what we hear under our ear when we practice is one thing. I don't mean intonation. Intonation you actually should and be able to hear when you play. And you can have tuners these days, and you have to all kind of this help without people, even without the teacher, right? But overall sound, it's impossible. Overall sound, you need to have a feedback, very honest feedback. So when you think it sounds like this, they will tell you how it sounds from outside. Okay, and then you calibrate what you're doing, at least for that. And usually there's more stuff that will be very apparent from the outside. Think about ballet dancers. Like, is it possible to learn ballet only by watching videos? I don't think so, because you can see that person walking there all the time in ballet class, right? There's always teacher who slightly adjusts the form, who slightly not like, okay, here's there, here's that. That's the same in violin. But on first steps, I think it's possible if the person is really gifted, yeah. Hello, Jack. Double stop on second and fourth fingers together are so hard in the first position. The fingers they tense up easily. How to practice them? All right, let me see. So first, by this question, I assume that in other positions and higher positions, they're not tense already. Yeah, they shouldn't be. So if you're higher position when there's no extensions, the fingers really don't need to be tense at all, no matter what you're playing there. That or that one. There's some tension, of course, that's necessary to press the string down. But here, if you're in first position, I would imagine that, yeah, for instance, if I have a smaller third, this one is smaller. This is usually more comfortable to play because you have these two fingers together. The hardest one, of course, is the one when you have second finger down to the first, and this one is here. Well, a lot depends really on, again, as I said, on how tense your hand is. Usually a lot of problem with the fourth, two and four is it because the hand is tense to begin with. And so even when one plays separate notes, the hand is somewhat tense, or between the fingers, or maybe there's some flaws in the movement, like, when this a lot of times happens to beginning violinists, the second finger gets sort of stuck against the first, like this, just playing single notes, forget about double stops, right? So if that's the case, where the thumb is, very important. If the thumb is there in the back, it amplifies the tension. And so in that case, everything is kind of bunched up here, and to get that fourth in there is like nearly impossible for some people. So it's really hard. And so there's a lot of tension and improper position. So basically, you want to start first with smaller intervals and not pressing the fingers down at all, so basically that kind. There's no sound, so you don't use the bow for that, and you just will do this, and you make sure that they fall together and they get off together, and then lightly, so right now I have, if I press, it will be G, and this one, if I press, will be C sharp. So then I will do an exercise like that, not pressing again, G, maybe slightly pressing halfway, and then you go and then you slide that second finger back. Slide that finger back. So you need to start already with the fact that they're not like doing this. If they're doing this, first you need to address that problem and then go to the rest of it. You see what I mean? So basically, yeah, it's a very complex thing. And by itself, there shouldn't be too much tension when you're playing 4th, 2/4 in first position, if everything else functions correctly. Okay, so hope that's helpful. Do you have any tips to improve sight reading or oral skills? Yeah, sight reading, sure. You need to sight read a lot. You need to sight read every day. Something new. It can be something short, but you have to sight read it for not it, but you have to sight read whatever that is for 5 minutes at least, but every day without skipping. I assume that you're already playing, so therefore you know what to look for. Sight reading, first you will look at the key signature, time signature. Is it 4 or 3? The key signatures is the B flat or some other flats or sharps, the key. Then we remember it when we quickly look at the length of our excerpt and we see any difficult spots, and we quickly subdivide the rhythm if necessary. You kind of see the rhythm, if you see like da 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 da. Well, that's what I would go, 16 notes, dum bum pa 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 pa. Okay, got it. And then I will be reading it. So there's a little bit of a moment of preparation about you're a beginner, maybe a 30-second thing to prepare. The better, or maybe a minute even, perhaps. Honestly, I just wouldn't remember. The minute is too long, 30, 40 seconds. And then it reduces. So good sight readers don't, and they just kind of look at their bam, and then they start reading, and it's there. So that's number one. Now, oral skills, piano. Piano is the best thing if you have the piano, or you can do a violin. You can play a note, open string, then sing it. Always be able to sing all the notes, and then you train the intervals, just singing the intervals. On piano, of course, is the best if you can do it. I actually have piano here, so I can show you a little bit. For instance, this is A, right? So be able to hear that this is A. So this is A, and this is A, right? And then hearing what kind of an interval it is. It's a minor third, F sharp. And then you can sing those, exactly how you're playing them. So that is all oral skill, oral skill 101, the beginning of oral skills. If you go further, you have start listening to intervals, thirds, sixths, whatever intervals. Possibly somebody will play them for you, so you can guess them. And then you go to more intervals and chords. And then music dictations, that's oral skills too. So sight singing is very important. So sight singing, that's why you need to intone the notes with your voice, of course, to learn. And then to be able to sight sing, just like with sight read, sight sing. So sight sing actually comes first. In true practice, it has to be first. First you sing, you hear it in your inner ear in a way, then you sing it, then you play it. So that would be actually the best way to go to a beginner, how to learn it, right? Okay, sight singing, then sight reading with the instrument. All right. Aria. Hi, I'm from Bolivia. Okay. What is the technique to play double strings? Well, you put the bow on 2 strings. That's the technique. And I'm serious here. It's just really, you put the bow on 2 strings, and you have to practice that, because it looks like it's very easy for those people who do play them, but yeah. So here, 1, and you have the different planes, and you put them 2, and you see that you can keep the bow parallel to the bridge. and that you can produce even movement here, and you practice open strings, and then you can start practicing double stops, which at first will be most likely your octaves with the open string and sixths. Okay, Jack, hello. I was wondering what tips, question. I was wondering what tips you have for auditioning for summer camps. Oh, you attended UNTSSI. Okay, well, I wasn't there that one time. But you're auditioning to some East Coast camps this summer. Well, I mean, you really need to prepare whatever they ask about the program. So if they ask, if it's like Brevard summer camp, music festival, there are excerpts that you need to prepare, some orchestral excerpts. It's an orchestral camp. If it's something chamber music, a lot of times, some of them don't ask chamber music, some of them do. So basically go to the website, study what they require, and make sure that you're ready by the deadline. So yeah, that would be really important. I'm not sure what other tips I can give you. I mean, you just need to have a good audition, good video audition for all the places that you'll be applying. Okay. All right. Next question. Professor Julia, is it advisable to teach right wrist exercises with a longer bow stroke or shorter ones? I will start with the shorter ones. Yeah, I will start. Do you mean the actual string crossings, like rapid string crossings? Right wrist exercises? Well, maybe no. Or you mean just this? Yeah, everything was a shorter one, actually. It will be still the same. So if I'm teaching somebody more, basic from the beginning, yeah, we will always go to the middle of the bow because it's more comfortable. And so, yeah. So that is the movement when a student can, let me see. The student should hold the bow rather lightly, so not like this, but just putting the fingers on the bow and gently touching. And it could be, the bow can be at this angle rather than this angle, because at this angle there's a lot of weight, and this angle there's much less weight. And so if you're teaching in person, then it's easier, because in person you can actually have that and hold the bow yourself, and then you place the finger, and then you say, okay, now move with your wrist first, kind of like this, right? You move with the forearm basically, and then the wrist sort of yields, I call it, and try to take this bow away from my hand just a little bit, but so this, and then now go the other way, and again lead with the forearm, and then that will be this movement. It will be at the middle. I would first do it in the middle, and on the violin also in the middle, and then but some people actually, you try and it doesn't happen, and then you go here when the bow is really heavy, and then you can say, okay, so just put the bow there and then collapse the wrist down, and you play, okay, only without sliding, hopefully. Then you go, well, even with sliding at that point in the beginning, right? And then you drag it up, and then drag it down, and then drag it up. And again, you're looking at the that reciprocal movement, So, and hopefully it's there. And if it's not there, sometimes it's okay. It's okay not to do it from the beginning. It's just enough that the hand is not really grabbing. So yeah, short bows. So either short bows here or short bows close to the frog, and then the tip. Okay. So learning to fish is asking me a question of learning violin. Wait a second. It just jumped somewhere. Okay. Should you always have space between the left hand and the neck fingerboard of the violin when not playing double stops or chords? That is a question that some people will say yes and some people will say no. For instance, when I play, in my schooling, in our schooling, most people were touching slightly the skin of the index finger was touching the neck in first positions, first to third third position, But of course, not when you're shifting. I mean, when you're shifting, well, I guess it could touch very lightly. So it shouldn't interfere with shifting. So, but some people, like Sir Igudi Menuhin, he always played with a space. And some people play like that. I don't, so therefore I can't tell you what's more comfortable for me. The way I learned it is more comfortable, but I'm sure for him, the way he learned it was more comfortable. So the question is, whatever is more comfortable for you, and whatever, I mean, we were kind of where I was, and in Moscow, that is, and who taught me at first, it kind of wasn't allowed to have that space because it was, I think they feared that when people do this, they end up without having a home, so to speak, and also these knuckles can be, and then this can happen here, and that of course not good. So, but whether if you are in a nice position here, your thumb is in the right place, whatever, and you're slightly away, because that's how you learned it, and that's how it feels comfortable, sure, as long as it doesn't do anything funky, unnecessary, okay? All right. Oh, thank you. All right, thank you so much. Oh, you're very welcome. People, please like. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's important. Yeah, because I guess algorithm is created that way on YouTube, the correct algorithm. Okay, my privilege as well. Thanks for the 4-finger tips on getting the same sound. Thank you. Hello from Chicago. Hello, Chicago. I would love to hear any tips you may have about maintaining good breathing while playing. Do you ever encounter students who hold their breath without knowing it? Absolutely. Well, I was one, as an example. I still remember when I was performing some kind of a jury, I think, or a concert even in a recital when I was little. And I remember I didn't know that I wasn't breathing. So at one point I was probably 8 or 9, whatever. And then suddenly I felt like the air was hurting my nose from inside. It got so dry, and I almost had tears in my eyes as I was still playing, So later I figured out that that's what it was. I forgot how to breathe. I wasn't breathing. I was holding my breath a lot. And that's not good. That's an excellent point. It's not good. So how to breathe? Well, what I don't teach beginners really, almost never. But to everybody who comes to me, a lot of times people don't breathe, even when they come to college, to conservatory level. So it's, first of all, keeping attention to your breath, that you are breathing, and reminding yourself very often to check it. Secondly, when we start, for instance, we take a breath, deep breath, and then start exhaling. Then applying the bow to the string and going. That's also very important. The way I was taught, not from the not breathing, physical breathing point, but from musical point. Yeah, like it's, and then you play. So you inhale and then you play. And you see the problem with that one is, even though it is correct musically, sort of like the idea is correct, but physically it's not good, because and a lot of times you will just hold it there, on intake, inhale. Or you will exhale at some point and then you will hold it there, because just forget, because your attention goes so much to what you're doing. And usually that is also may point to tension in this particular person's hands, tension in here, coordination issues. Usually tension comes from the lack of coordination, right? So that's where tension originates, because we need to coordinate very well. And if we can't, we get tense in some way or another, and that affects our breathing. So all of that stuff sort of needs to be looked at. And I would go, main thing that I really do this, and then the note, and just kind of being aware of this, and then being aware that, you keep breathing, even when you keep playing and you check it. So that's what I do anyway. Guatemala, hello. What recommendations and exercises do you suggest for bow strokes and vibrato exercises? Bow strokes exercises, you can take, well, it depends what bow strokes you want. We did a lot, if you're more beginning level or a beginning intermediate level, we did a lot of that on simple etudes. Like there's an Allard etude in C major. Allard is spelled Alard, Allard, or Kreutzer etude. Da 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 da. Everybody knows that one. It's either number 2 in some editions. Some editions is number 1. The basic one. So we did it a lot on Kreutzer number 2. My teachers use that one. And so then you put your bowings, whatever bowings you want to learn in this. Or first, I would imagine it will be just détaché, just simple connected. That's also bowing, right? So with proper movement. And then bowings like that, combination bowings. So that one, then you reverse it, and then you can slur it over, and it becomes. It's actually still also a bowing, even though it's pretty much détaché in essence. Martelé, you go to Martelé. Sorry, I have a table here. So you do martelés, you can do spiccatos. You can start learning spiccato, although spiccato I probably will start with open string anyway, and then when it's better you can use it here, or you can use it on a scale. Scale is also excellent for training the bowings. Small scales, I wouldn't go high octave scales at all, like 1 position scales. Today, 1st position scale, tomorrow 2nd position scale, day after tomorrow 3rd position scale, and 4th position scale. I don't know, depending on your level of advancement in the left hand, and do the number of bowings that you want to refine or polish or just learn there. I also very much like the Shevchik. It's Opus 3, the 40. Well, of course, Shevchik, on a lower level, it has to be the first book of Shevchik exercise for the bowing, and he gives a lot of bowings there. So that one. And then 40 variations. I love that one. But I modify them, I don't play them I don't give them to my students in really fast tempo as they are there. I put the tempo down, and I use them rather than I use them for my purposes or for their purposes rather than just playing exactly the way it is. More advanced level, of course, it's the Tartini, the bowing exercises on the theme of Corelli. That's really great. So that's for the bow. So what else is another part of the question? In vibrato exercises, honestly, I always just do when my students do it, they do it on each finger. There's no specific music that they play for exercises. I suppose you can just get the scale-like movement and do it on each finger, and if you train, for instance, non-stopping vibrato will be helpful too. Yeah, but I don't have any specific exercises like material for vibrato. Katerina, which are good double stop exercises and etudes for the beginning? Greetings from Athens. Oh, great. Yes. Hello, Athens. Double stop exercises. Trot. I would say the Trott Melodious, I think they're called Melodious double stop exercises by Josephine Trott, Trott. We did them when I was little. We did them really on the Russian music, in Russian etudes, whatever, and they were by various people. But I think if you want right now to look for a book, of course, Shevchik, you can also take Shevchik, but there you need to see that you don't go into fourths or fifths. It has to be simple. Usually we start with a combination of sixths and octaves, and then thirds, and then the rest of them I think Strad is pretty good, I would say. Um, hello. How does one control the urge to play too fast? Say, after a chromatic scale leading to the tonic, it's easy to give it up, and keep a faster tempo for the following passage. The urge to play faster is trained only by one thing. It's called willpower. So your willpower is there, and then you, of course, grade it. So you get the metronome and you play that exactly, and then you see how you play next notes in the tempo in which you want to be, must be, not the faster tempo, correct? So then what you do, you memorize how it feels with the metronome still beating. Just memorize physically how it feels. Then you turn the metronome off, and then you play the same thing and try to recreate the feeling which kept you in a correct tempo. But first, you have to have the willpower to endure all of that, because it's not very simple. So when you perform, and if you played like that acceleration at the end, unwanted acceleration for a while, it could be really in what I call your default by then. Like you will default to it in the performance, possibly where the nerves are present, adrenaline and nerves. So then when you're on stage in a spot like that, you have to play slower than you want. And that's where actually the willpower really comes in. You play against the feeling of what's correct, because your body will urge you to play faster. And you said, nope, I remember, I worked on this. I play slower than I want at that moment on stage. And that's hard to do. It's willpower and courage, actually. Yeah. So you're very welcome. La Paz, Bolivia. Very nice. Okay, let me see. Again, another question. When practicing and playing string crossings, does minimizing movement in the arm help with clear crossing? What really helps the most in minimizing the string crossing is to make sure that the bow is not far from the next string to where you're going. That's what the most important thing is. So if I'm going, yeah, I would of course not try to do it here, because I can use my wrist if I repeat them, right? And even if I don't repeat them, let's say I go on, right? Yes, it will be more movement of the wrist in terms of connecting the two strings. And I am already on a D string closer to A. Okay, so here a question. If you watched my video on string crossings, there are two of them actually, I believe. And then one of them, I do go into the different levels on one string. We have level closer to lower string, a level exactly in the middle, and level closer to the next string. And we need to be able to differentiate the levels and know them. And then when we're crossing, we're on a closer to the other string without touching that, of course. So that's what is most important. And it will also minimize all kinds of movements by itself, because a lot of times this happens because people are just too far from next string. But if it's technical issue, if the wrist doesn't engage, then of course you'll have bigger movement, and yeah, it's less desirable, put it this way. So you're welcome to Honduras. You're welcome. So thank you for the live stream. Okay. Next one. Do you recommend solfège for growing solid, good tone production? If so, what should one focus on while progressing to longer time scales while drawing the bow? If not, what exercise should one do? I think I said a little bit before that if it's to start to get sound, we usually start with playing good sound to get that solfège, or whatever else people may call it, or just good connected détaché, as we call it a lot of times, in every part of the bow, in small parts of the bow, not too small, depending on, again, on the level. So if its level is like beginning, intermediate level, it will be a portion, like maybe 1/4 of the bow, let's put it this way. So 1/4 of the bow in the middle, 1/4 or 1/3 even in the bow at the close to the tip, and then 1/3 or 1/4 at the closer to the frog. So and then we expand on both ends, and then we make the parts of the bow smaller. Like, okay, if you start with 1/3, then you will go to 1/4. Okay. So I would still go through this first, that everything is clear, how it all functions, how it sounds in each part of the bow. So then when you play long bows, you connect the parts. You connect that one in which you know exactly what to do, to this one in which you know exactly what to do, and this one you know exactly how your hand should be and the angle, and then last one in which again you know exactly how it should be in the angle. Okay, and then you go back, and here again you know, oh, okay, I know that part, and I know that part, and I know this part. So that's my approach to it. So yeah. Next one, Lainey, hello. What is the correct placement of the shoulder rest on the violin? I can't say if I got positioned that the guy doesn't want me to be tense. Yeah, you know what? There is no universal place. There is no universal place up on putting this thing, if we use it, right, somewhere in violin. It really has to do also with where your chin rest is, what type of chin rest you're using, and to your and also your own body build. So it really is individual. So there is no good one suggestion. In general, I recommend that the shoulder rest is not too high. This is basically the lowest setting on this type of shoulder rest that I'm using, a Wolf Secondo. So it is the lowest setting here. I can't go any lower. And I don't have too much here as well, the height. Some people will have, if you want more height, if you need more height, I would rather increase the height of the chin rest rather than the shoulder rest, actually. Although you see some people who are really good performers and they play a huge height of shoulder rest. I don't know. I guess if, like I think Gil Shaham plays on rather tall shoulder rest, and also I think another Spanish violinist, Maria Dueñas, I think she plays on a pretty high shoulder rest, and they seem to be fine. But again, we don't know how it will be down the road. So, but your question is not about the height, right? Your placement is like here. I would suggest first, okay, if you got your chin rest and you think it's okay, so then you just do incremental changes like this, So I adjust it slightly here, slightly there, and then try it again. So for me, for instance, I immediately feel that, oh, that thing is almost falling off my shoulder if it's too close to here. So I will adjust it back. However, also, sometimes the shoulder rest has to be, the legs should be closer together, and then you will be, like mine are a little closer together. It can be much harder further. If they're further, I will be more in the middle. The whole thing will be in the middle. So there's look for adjustability in the shoulder rest, so you can try these things. And if everything fails, then two options: go to a different chin rest, try different chin rest. You can be pretty amazed how much difference it makes. Placement of chin rest, type of chin rest, yeah. And then and also go to another shoulder rest. But I would first look at the chin rest, actually. So, Flo told me, thank you. In the minute and a half that he spent in here, he realized more than 7 years in music school. Wow, I must be a magician. But no, thank you for the compliment. I'm glad. Regarding the position of the thumb and in the left hand, should it be parallel to the first finger or in between the first and second? I do have a whole, I do go over that question, not only in my videos that are on the basics of the left hand in big detail, okay, but also in my last 2 videos with the hand specialist. From physiological standpoint, I'm asking her this question as well, okay? So I highly recommend that you go and watch those things really. So again, the answer is it really depends on where your thumb grows. And she shows it there how to determine where the thumb is. And I show in my videos of then how you translate it into the violin. And yes, for most people, it's in between the first and second finger. For absolute majority of people, I would say it's in between first and second fingers. Why do teachers discourage placing the thumb besides the nut? Again, please watch these videos, and especially the last ones, the medical ones, the violinist's health, they're called. And in one of them, this question about the thumb is very much thoroughly explained. Okay, let me see. Okay, it's jumped a bit, so I'm looking for. Okay, and you're from Philippines, wonderful. So this is somebody suggesting to Lainey about the changing chin rest and shoulder rest. Yes, absolutely. That's a good comment there. Please read. If you don't want to change your chin rest or shoulder rest, you can try chin pads. You can also try not chin pads, but shoulder pads. There doesn't exist correct placement of shoulder rest for everyone. That's what I said, and I agree. Person also says the same exactly thing. So yeah, you just need to trial and error, need to find something comfortable. For somebody, it's a good morning. Okay, here's a good evening, but there's a good morning. Somebody writes, Maria writes, I found ideal pair chin rest and shoulder rest after 3 years. Before I had the same problem. Yeah, truly. I had a lot of problems with the matching of shoulder rest and chin rest when I was growing up. I was growing up and it was still Soviet Union, and we had not much stuff in there. And especially we didn't have variety of shoulder rests or chin rests, as a matter of fact. They just kind of were stuck with whatever you got. And that was hard. And I remember having terrible problems with tension also, because then you feel like you have to grip and you shouldn't. Anyway, but that's a separate question. We don't go there. Just a second. How to practice fast speed at 16th note in a sautille stroke? My left hand fingers not coordinating well with the right bow hand stroke. Okay, so the first thing actually would be to play that passage that you have in sautille on string in détaché in the tempo in which the sautille will be. Okay, that would be really important, because the coordination is not because, I don't think it's because of the bowing itself. It's just about matching the movement, the sautille movement. It's basically a détaché movement, so in other words, again, I'll show you on a little scale, for instance, how you like this. So if I'm, if I go like this, right? So something is, not coinciding, then so I will do a very small bow in the part of the sautille bow and make sure that my right hand matches my fingers where the fingers fall. Okay, so that's number one. If you think that it's actually in the bowing, if the bowing is uneven or something, then I would practice sautille bowing separately. But I think it's about really coordination. Okay, so coordinating with the right hand bow stroke. Yeah, you really do need to check your détaché. So if détaché in fast tempo like that doesn't work, if it doesn't connect, if something is like you hear something like not together, slow down a little bit. Sometimes people slow down to da da da. No, not of course, not at all. So da 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 in détaché on the string. Okay, in the right part of the bow where sautille lives. Okay, so that should help. Next question. How do you control bow shaking, especially when retaking the bow? It depends on which, where, here it's shaking. when you retake to the frog or retaking at the tip. I'm not exactly sure how you control bow shaking. Usually when retaking the bow, I think it will be more tip retake, like this. I'm not exactly sure. So Jason, if you can clarify, I would be grateful, because then I could possibly answer this question. Flo, greetings from Moscow. Thank you for the instructive videos. Thanks to you. There is motivation to become a better saxophonist. Really? Wow. Then you're now, I am really thrilled. I can teach not only violin, I teach a saxophone. Fantastic. Well, but I think I know what you mean. Yeah, it's the way of thinking, right? Okay. Shirley saying, I did alternate rhythms and another methods, but still difficult to get the left hand fingers matches with sautille stroke in the right hand. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's good that you do this, though, these things. Yeah. So, Shirley, try that stuff with being on string and in faster tempo, and see what you start hearing. So it also could be that it very well could be that one of your fingers is landing in improper time. When we play faster, a lot of times like things start happening, like again on little scale here. A lot of times it's 2, 3. The third goes too soon on the string, or fourth maybe. Usually third goes too soon. And so they sort of like mush together, If that is in your passage, obviously you will not be doing that on purpose, but in your passage, a couple, when one finger here or the other finger there is just a little bit off the time, then of course you won't be able, but you won't be able to coordinate it with the déchet either. You see, that's what I'm saying. So, yeah, try the déchet and let me know. Okay, next question. Wait a second, where to go? Should I practice with a tuner? Is there a good way to do quick, large shifts? How do I do parallel octaves, tenths quickly with small hands? My goodness. I mean, how many questions do you have just from one person? When should students learn vibrato? It's like a whole hour condensed into one question, so to speak. Should you practice with a tuner? You could, if it's a good tuner. I recommend Total Energy Tuner app on the phone. Total Energy Tuner, TE Tuner. It's a great app, and in there, choose Pythagorean setting. Key doesn't matter so much. Don't go through keys, and like I'm playing in C major, I will check C major. Not very important. Better just do like D major. Good for practically all purposes, unless you go in a lot of flats. Okay, so Pythagorean temperament. Choose that. Don't practice an even temperament, of course, or just. Not just, not even, Pythagorean only. Good way to do quick, large shifts. Well, yes. There is a way that is called shift very lightly, I would say. That would be that's the kind of very general question. So my general answer would be, light shifts. That's the only thing, especially if it's long distance. Yeah, the lighter the better. How do I practice? How do I do parallel octaves, tenths quickly with small hands? Parallel octaves, what do you mean? Do you mean fingered octaves and tenths? Maybe that's what you mean. Well, you quickly with small hands, it's very important that your thumb is not in the back, that's for sure. So thumb has to be in the middle of the hand, and you stretch from the upper finger down. So never starting from here going there, but from upper finger down. And so you will have that kind of a feel for the tenth, for instance. For fingered octave, if that's what you mean, parallel octave, you put the third finger first or fourth finger first, and then you stretch the first down. Again, you will have to have that space in between these fingers when you have small hands, okay? So not like this, okay? And then always from the fourth down, and then memorize how that position feels. That correct position for the smaller hand, definitely. But for any hand, it will be like this. But yes, big hands, they can get away with more, and small hands can't. So that's When should a student learn vibrato? When after they're very solidly playing, very in tune in at least first position, but I would say first and third. First, second, third. I wouldn't teach first and third. I would teach 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 positions. So once they're playing solidly, at least in 3 of them, 1, 2, 3, that's when you can start vibrato. Not earlier. It's used. I mean, I don't like it earlier because they have to hear the center of the note, and that's without vibrato. Next question. How do you increase left hand pitch speed? I'm a student working on spadiato. Left hand pitch speed. Well, actually, you just play it faster. You push yourself to play, certain things in a faster tempo. I can't really show on this violin. My strings are very, very low here, so I can't really demonstrate much in terms of left hand pits and actually in regular pits as well, but left especially. So, but really it's really about the strength of your hand. That left hand pizzicato is the strength of your muscles and tendons. So if your tendons are good because your muscles are good, then it's easier to do, and it's easier to do it faster. So if your hand is not strong enough, I would do strengthening exercises outside of the pits and with the pits, of course, as well. But that's really that. So again, strengthening exercises, please watch my second video with Dr. Andras Terzik. That is, I already got it out, that she gives wonderful exercises for strengthening the hand, which means strengthening all the tendons of all the fingers. So, okay, next. Hello, Delta. How can I work chords on the violin? You work chords on violin. Okay, I will tell you the best way I can explain to you. That's, again, it's a very broad question. Which chords? I mean, 3-note chords, 4-note chords, any chords, to start chords, to do them in fast tempo. All of that will be slightly different, but I cover all of that with how to play chords in my video. Okay, so again, I hope that you're a subscriber and you can just go through playlists and see it. But yeah, you can start any chords whether with 2 notes in the bottom, 2 on top, or 2 and 2 if it's 4-note chords. You start from that and you make the movement nice and smooth, and nothing is tense and nothing is going like that. That's how you start them. And as the tempo progresses, then eventually you will go to be able to play 3 notes together. 4 notes will never play together, pretty much. 4 notes will always break. We break chords. But 3 notes, yeah, you can eventually, but not in the first, couple years. So next. Hello. The question is, just a second. My opinion on practicing fifths to build a good hand frame. I've recently been reading a book by Rodney Friend about it. I don't know a book by Rodney Friend. I need to see that. Fifths to build a good hand frame. I'm not sure what maybe this book talks about this. The hand frame, what I understand by hand frame is the octave hand frame. So when I being trained where I was trained, when we refer to hand frame, we mean this position, so that our forearm is turned enough to the violin to accommodate the 4th finger. So I'm not sure about the 5th, honestly. I'm sorry, I can't answer more because I just don't know what it means. Okay, Uni is saying, hello, my vibrato is fast. Can you advise me how to slow it down? It actually is quite a big question and big answer. If your vibrato is very fast, I would assume, even though assumption isn't good, but I would assume, since I don't know how you do this fast vibrato, I would imagine that your vibrato is probably the forearm vibrato, that it comes from here. and that's what makes it very fast. So basically, it's vibrato based on tension in the hand, specifically to make that vibrato. So usually it is this way. If your hand vibrato, yeah, it's possible to do it also just with the wrist. It's more rare. So I'm not sure which your case is. Usually when somebody comes to me and they have that uncontrollable, usually forearm vibrato or arm vibrato, we can call it, but it's really forearm, this. So when I encounter a student like this, I usually teach them to do to use the wrist vibrato. And my wrist vibrato video, of course, is like one of my first or the first video that I ever uploaded on YouTube here. So, and that's exactly how I teach it. And yeah, it takes time, but it's it works for most people. It works. So to slow down existing tight vibrato is nearly impossible, because it's based, I mean, you can just go slower, but it will be really slow if it's an arm. Now, if it's a wrist vibrato that you're very, very, very tense, well, I mean, it's kind of, like if, then it's not a very productive conversation, honestly, from my part. But I almost never met the tight wrist vibrato. I met tight arm vibrato that leads to too much speed. So yeah, I would say your best bet would be to learn a good wrist vibrato, and then you'll be able to combine them at some point. Yeah, but not just add it to your arsenal. So any tips? Next question. Any tips for relaxing when playing constantly at the frog? I'm always exhausted by playing don't one and just diminishing returns on the accuracy after that. Oh, you mean the chords? Well, if you're playing, depends on which moment you use to play chords. If you're using, first of all, so the don't one is the etude caprice that uses all chords. It's all chords, right? So if you're practicing it for the left hand security, at that point, at the beginning, we usually do left hand. We have to have good intonation first. I would not practice. First of all, I would not practice necessarily very much at the frog, and secondly, I would not practice any retakes at all. So tayam pam paya taya taya. So your left hand can get there on time, and then accelerate playing as it comes to the eventual tempo as you need it. Then I would go for, so left hand should be learned, that way. So then when you start using in the fast tempo already chords, tam, pam, pam, you need to rest. You need to be able to let go of your arm, forearm and here, wrist. You need to let go for a moment when you are actually on the strings. So if you're constantly holding and then retaking, that's when we usually get tired, you see. So ability to, I mean, I think I do talk about this also in the video where I show the chords. So yes, it's ability to rest, if I do this, I mean, of course, in slow tempo, it won't work. It won't sound good, but it's like I feel this. I feel like relaxed when I'm moving. And that also, by the way, adds the pressure, enough pressure to already heavy part of the bow. So I can play like that for a long time. It's not going to get tired because it's dynamic. It doesn't sit in attention anywhere. Okay. I hope it helps. Hello, how do you work on feeling right when playing a piece? I tend to feel like an imposter at times when playing. An imposter? I don't know how that feels. Feeling right. I kind of don't know what it means. You mean, I really don't. I don't know how to feel like an imposter. If I'm playing a piece, I'm playing a piece. And I'm trying to express a phrase by phrase by phrase by phrase. Not trying, I mean expressing the phrase. I know what I need to do, and I don't ever feel like an imposter. So not sure how it can be done. Maybe I'll ponder about this, or maybe you can write me a little bit more of clarification. What's your recommended scale book for beginners? Oh, for beginners. Beginners. You know what? I don't teach beginners, right? I don't teach beginners. So when we studied in Russia, back then it was Gregorian, book by Gregorian scale, or Grigorian, as we said in Russian, or Gregorian, as you would say in English. And by the way, that book can be purchased. It's in print, but it can be purchased in Russian only. So you can put Gregorian scale in a search, and most likely you will get the Ruslania.com website. Ruslania, Ruslania, Ruslania website, and you can all just go there and type Gregorian, like Gregorian chant, okay, in their scales. And that will be in Russian language, though, without translation. But, if you're reading music, then you can figure out what is in there. Those are great. I mean, their combination of Shrimali, or Grimali, which now in English is spelled with Hrimaly. Grimali, it's actually Grimali. So it's a combination of Grimali and some other scales, and it's really fantastic. So if not, then I think Barber, I think she goes from the beginning, I'm afraid to say, but I know that some of my friends who do teach beginners, they use her book. I don't know from the moment of beginning or a little bit later, but it's a very good book too. Okay, oops, again, it jumped. Now, next question. When I hold my middle ring finger on one string and my index on the next, example, holding F, okay, let me go and see F sharp on G string and B on A string. My fat fingers interfere and dampen one of the string. Ah, I see. So basically, if you need this, right, you need a perfect fourth, and your fingers are kind of doing this, right? Because they're touching the string. The only thing, I honestly cannot quite tell you, because my fingers have been so skinny. It's actually, I would love to have fat fingers, but I never had them. So I would imagine that the only way you can do it is to put that F sharp much closer to the G string. So you need to create that space. That's number one. If you try this and it still doesn't work, then what you can do, you can go to a good luthier and ask that person to spread basically, they have to do a different bridge and reset your nut here, so that the strings are, I do think that they do both, that the strings can be placed slightly more apart than they possibly are on your violin right now. So I can tell you this. So for instance, this violin, for me, I'm going to do just the opposite, because I have thin fingers and this violin has wide spacing. So if I put a fifth right there, you see? So do you see how my finger goes inside of both strings? And that's not really high in position even, but it's like third position. It's already basically in between strings. So the sound of that is very fuzzy, and that's very good, not very good. So it's my newer instrument. My old violin, however, had very narrow spacing, so of the strings, so more narrow than this one by far. And so I never had that problem there, but I kind of had the problem of maybe touching sometimes, and I learned to do it by putting the finger closer to the opposite string and doing this way. So, but yeah, I would recommend looking into it and just spacing your strings a little bit more on both nut. It obviously will be both nut and especially on a bridge. Okay, so yeah, it should help. All right. How do you control bow shaking when retaking above the tip? Okay, so that's at the tip. I also have tension from improper shoulder rest placement. My shoulders raise and I find myself gripping. Well, it's either shoulder rest placement, or, as I said before, or it's your chin rest and your shoulder rest just don't work together for your body very well, and you need to change one of them or both of them. That's very, very likely. A lot of times I see that. But you know what? Now, let's say just that part of the question this moment. So even if you do this, and then you still feel like, oh, it doesn't, this doesn't fix the problem. It's more comfortable. Everything's more comfortable, but you still find yourself doing it. That will be habit, the power of habit, you see. So that's very important. I mean, you can have perfect setup already, perfect. But, if your body was used to doing this or this when you play, it will do it anyway, comfortable or not, So you'll have to relearn how to not to raise or grip. So the left shoulder usually cradles. I call it cradling. You're like this. You see, that will be cradling more. It's not just up; it's more forward, and a little bit up. And this one, this one a lot of times just lift up. Okay, so you need to make sure that this doesn't happen when it's comfortable. So control bow shaking when retaking about the tip. Well, I mean, it's just really here you need to hold much better. So when you do, I'm really firmly holding that, and on an extension, I'm doing an extension. So at first, what, there are exercises. We did actually exercises for that. Yeah, we did exercises. We, meaning we, the students in my school. So the exercises of that nature, like, again, you can use either scale or Kreutzer number 2, here. Okay, I have confined space here, but anyway, so it's a down here, very short bow, and fast to the tip, right? Okay, like this. So if it's really hard at the very tip, well, very tip we don't use. We use like functional tip is about there. Okay, it's not really like where the white thing is or where the hair ends. No, it's just a little bit off that. So functional tip. So if it's really hard here, go a little bit less. I mean, this is also tip. Okay, so you don't need to be here, but go here. So it depends also how long your arm is and how big your hands are. So yeah, it's a tip is that area. It's already tip. Okay, so then you can also do. So basically, it's hard to hold the bow there on extension because you're extended. Okay, so it's just difficult at first, and you need to get used to it. So then this other thing of the same exercise, very short movement up, and then the same thing up here. So up and then up. That's another one. And then 2 downs, even though you probably will benefit most of up, up, and down and up, down and up. So the movement, we're trying to get as fast the movement to the tip as possible, and to keep the bow as close to the string as possible while it's in the air, not too far. Okay, so yeah, it's just like you have to really hold it. So, but it also, Jason, if you're dealing with this shoulder rest placement and whatever, I probably won't stress myself right now doing all of this hard retakes at the tip, because you'll get more tense. Really, because I mean that requires hold, and that's basically tension, but it's a good tension. And here, if you have other things, I would first deal with that issue, honestly, myself. Uni, yes, you use the arm vibrato, yeah, wrist vibrato. Okay, let me see. Again, it skips somewhere down there. Okay, Jason, thank you, and thank you too. Yeah, Sassman House is a good beginner book series. Yes, absolutely. That's very good. Yeah. Any refresher tips, reminders on tight thumb tension and finger pressure for the classic shredding number 1? I find when the fourth finger gets used more is when my thumb and hand gets tense. Yeah, of course. Usually is. Yeah, usually is. It's because of that. So here it's really important that we have that we turn the forearm in order to reach with the fourth finger, turn the forearm and not turn the wrist. Again, for some people, it's just like they try to turn forearm, but they actually turn the wrist more than the forearm. You see, the forearm is, my watch is looking here, right? And it actually should be turning both. Okay, so we'll be looking over there. But not actually as much. I mean, that is just demonstration of how the forearm should be turning the wrist. Yeah, the fourth finger is weak and short. So yes, usually it is. So a very good idea to do the exercise of shredding, like exercise slow tempo. I think I showed this also. Okay, so that's for the head. Okay, here. So you move the thumb. I'm pretty sure I have it in one of my videos, even with counts. And how you take the thumb off when you keep the finger and doing this, so I would hunt for that video. It will be more in depth than what I can answer here, but yeah, it's also not to playing faster, making sure the thumb is not back. Okay, if that thumb is on the back side here, you can't fix it really. You have to have the thumb in a position where, what I call it, where it grows, where it wants to be. Okay. All right, Alex, hello. Nice to imagine that I see you. Gregorian scales. Yes, that's how Gregorian is spelled. Gregorian. Right there in Alex Saldarriaga's comment. Yeah, I'm glad you probably use them. Karen is asking, Bruch G minor finale begins with 16 notes in thirds. I assume fingered 1, 3, 2, 4. My 2, 4 don't touch the string simultaneously. Any tips to address it? Yes. Well, first of all, if you only play those thirds in the Bruch, beginning of the Bruch concerto, that is not going to lead you to very successful results, honestly, even if you fix what's there, because you need to practice scales and thirds. You just need to practice scales and thirds so that the movement of both fingers is there, so practicing things like that. Of that necessary, or of that with that type, or okay, so that's a little bit down the road, but that is not an Bruch. It's the same thing, only in higher position, right? So, but the mechanics of why they're not together most likely is because second finger is longer and it's by the string there, and the fourth finger is shorter and it's not by the string. So very likely your hand maybe I haven't seen it, but maybe it is not turned enough, just a tiny bit, not enough. And then the fourth finger has even further way to go, like this. It's further way to go. Now, my fourth finger is, of course, trained, so even if I turn my hand out, it won't be as comfortable for me, but I still will get there on time. But first, no, you don't want to do it. So you might want to reverse what wants to happen, which is, okay, I'll go to third position. Like that. Instead of two together, so my second goes there first, and my fourth is late, right? So I would reverse it on purposely. I will go fourth finger first. Sometimes you'll be surprised. You want to do that, and actually they will just fall down together. So that's nice. But yeah, basically, usually it's this. I would be very surprised if it's the other way around for you. But that's what I would do. The fourth has to be over the and the fourth has to be over the string. Absolutely, the fourth has to hover over the string. So well, again, you know what? I don't want to go to that beginning because it will be a wrong thing to do. You really need to fix your thirds everywhere to be able, because it will be everywhere. And trust me, you want to fix them in every position, in third and then first and maybe second position, any position before you go and start using them in Bruch. Because by the time one plays Bruch, one absolutely must be able to play 2-octave scales in thirds. If one doesn't do it, then it's like almost, gearing yourself for failure of some sort. It's just hard movement. You have to, not only for that movement, one has to be playing the scales in thirds and also in tenths. Maybe not all the 2-octave scale, but at least 1-octave scale on A and E string, or 1.5-octave scale on A and E string, different keys, tenths. Absolutely. I mean, that just has to be prerequisite of playing Bruch, And so many people, I hope it's not, maybe not you, but so many people just like first time they encounter double stop is in the concerto. No, it should be way prepared, but then you use it in the concerto. Okay, Shirley, you're very welcome to Canada. Do you have an order of concerti you work through with your students? I absolutely do. But right now, to tell you all of them, of course, will be too many. But I do. And I have a really good order because it's based on the accumulated knowledge from Yankelevich, like one of the people was asking me in the beginning, and through various later great teachers and pedagogues. Yeah. Okay. Maria is asking, do we always have to use new ways of interpreting songs? I don't know. Pieces? No, it depends. Example, Humoresco Dvorak. All the recordings are more sinning? More sinning? You mean singing? The newest? I'm not sure what is here. New ways of interpreting songs. So we don't use the word songs for pieces of music in classical jargon in English. We just say pieces. Okay, so pieces. No, new ways. No, it should be. I think it should be the way that is as close to the original as you can get, and that means that one has to be able to not only read notes, of course, obviously correctly, but read the intent of the composer. And that means decoding a lot of stuff that is on the page, including, of course, the harmony and harmonic analysis, first of all, and then also context, and also where the phrase goes, and just many musical things that we need to first look at. And then we go to our performing. And then we also look at what composer wrote in terms of dynamics, what composer wrote in terms of words. Sometimes people just, don't look even that says they're grazioso, and the person has no idea what grazioso is. So they're like, okay, it doesn't matter. Or the other way, maestoso, and somebody will play tam param 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 when it's maestoso. It has to sound completely different. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's new ways. No, more closer to what composer intended or wanted us to do. Yes, the truth of the piece. True. Yeah. Okay, I meant when interpreting a piece, I want to play it coherently to transmit the feelings to the composer intended to when he wrote the piece. Yes, that's exactly what I was telling you right now, answering the other question. Okay, so I understand. So then you were talking about imposture or interpreting the piece exactly. That's That's perfect. That's what you do. First, you study the score. You study what composer wanted to say. If you were a violinist, as you read, you're a violinist. So please don't go from violin parts. Just always go from actual score, at least with piano score, or a concerto, the whole thing, the orchestral score. Just don't go from violin parts, because violin parts are heavily edited. A lot of times, like all the time, they're edited by somebody. And so they tell you, oh, these bowings, or mostly it's bowings, and sometimes fingerings also affect interpretation. Or they will put you a crescendo diminuendo. For instance, in Wieniawski Concerto No. 2, there's a Polish edition, which by itself is really good edition. I mean, it's trustworthy in many, many, many ways. But the editor of that particular, I don't know, I actually have to say immediately that I don't know if there is more than one Polish edition, so I don't want to be caught without this disclaimer. Disclaimer is I have a Polish edition, quite, old, not very old, but very old, but quite old, probably 30 years old or 40 years old edition. Okay, so that particular one has very many good suggestions on what to do, but it also changes some phrasing by different bowings, and even puts a lot of crescendo diminuendo as the editor felt correct to express this phrase. Okay, so do I agree or not agree? Luckily, that particular player, violinist, was very good. But again, it's not something that goes from the score to me. It's somebody else's opinion, maybe very good opinion, but it's opinion that person took from the score, from knowing Wieniawski's music. And of course, Polish people probably maybe knowing Wieniawski much closer than many others. It's also true. But when I take Wieniawski music, I will go to all the scores. I will go to all the actual original material. And then I will do my own interpretation from the score. Okay. So that helps me. Yuni is asking another question. Can you please give me a tip for third chord scale? I wish to make a nice slur 1-3 and 2-4 without noise. My finger always sits 2 first and then 4. Oh yeah, that's what I was talking about. Yeah, I think I answered that question. It was yours or somebody else's. Yeah, first put the fourth. Ta-dam, pa-dam, the opposite to what the hand wants to do. Next question. How do you practice a relaxed left hand when shifting and the hand has to move around the violin body? I see. Shifting from B to C on E string in 3-octave G major scale. B to C, yeah, from second to first, right? My left hand is gripping. Well, first of all, you need to do shifts. I have that, by the way, I have a video on that. It's called Shifting Part 1. I would imagine you want to look to watch my Shifting Part 1. But here I can tell you, first of all, it's moving like this. Just moving very lightly, sliding, not gripping with the thumb at all, because of course, and then you keep any finger on the string, and it doesn't even depress the string, go on the surface of the string. Okay, so big distances. It's very important that you can go big distances. Then you can go to smaller distances the same way, So not depressing the string at that point and not pressing with anything with the thumb. Okay, so then you and around violin the same thing. If you that specifically here, it's this. So my thumb slides barely touching. So that's what you want. Now, the good news is that when we shift, our fingers should not press at all anyway. So for instance, if I, for that particular shift, I would first do 2-2. So not going to the changing fingers, but actually staying. You see, you don't hear. Never shift like this if you're not a total beginner who needs to hear where you're going. If you're above that level, if you already know where that D is, B and D, then you just go on light. So you press, and then you release, you go on the surface of the string, and then you go back. Okay, so that is all in my video, by the way, after this, right? And so then when you do this, you always shift on the last finger that was playing, which is B in this case, second finger. This one is up. And it only comes on the string, it falls on the string once you reached the position. Okay, so that's, and that meanwhile you tried this several times and you know how light it is here, and there's no reason to grip. Absolutely. So yes, the preparatory exercises like this, and then the actual change. And I do recommend that you watch my shifting videos, 2 of them actually. Okay, Chloe Svadlenka, how nice to see you here. When is a good time to transition from Suzuki for a beginner violinist as well? Oops, it jumped. Just a second. As well as when should I start introducing vibrato? Again, about vibrato, I already said vibrato after they are good in the first 3 positions, I would say, at least in 1 and 3 if you're starting Suzuki. I mean, I don't teach Suzuki, but okay. So first and 3, first position, third position, very cleanly, no vibrato, and then everything clean. So they play scales, they play arpeggios, they play all of that stuff, and they shift, and that's after that you can start doing vibrato. Transition from Suzuki, away from Suzuki, I mean, I cannot teach for Suzuki. I would not teach Suzuki if I could. I believe in a traditional, I mean, I was raised in traditional level of playing, of learning, on 1 string rather than immediate string crossings and so forth. But basically, I would say probably, after 2 books, maybe, after the first book, perhaps, or start using parallel in the first book already. They're easier things than what Suzuki gives. You see, that's the thing. You can, instead of just going where Suzuki goes right away, it's harder. So there are more preparatory steps that usually we take, in the traditional method. They're just cool, and that's easier achievable, and they sound nice, and kids like them too. So, I would do maybe parallel, adding, a lot of good Suzuki teachers actually do it. They use other little exercises or etudes or even tunes that are not in Suzuki book, but, are preparing the Suzuki tunes or songs or whatever you call them, pieces. Okay. So, but if you just want to completely switch away, I would say, depending, and as soon as you know where to go. But you can also, Chloe is going to UNT, so you can ask me this question when you see me in person as well. I can tell you more. Okay, where on the bow to start a little student on twinkles? Her bow goes at an X to strings and not perpendicular. In the middle, of course, only in the middle part of the bow. And you mean twinkles means that Mozart allegretto that everybody calls Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star? Yeah, that one. So before the students play any notes whatsoever, the student must practice on open strings and just concentrate only on the movement. And before they do this, they should be able to play without any, sliding on 1 string. So that's the number 1 thing. In 1 place, on 1 string. After they mastered the D string and then also A string, then you can go and connect them, in the middle part of the bow, of course. And then when that's done, then add the fingers, but not before. What open string warm-up exercise do you recommend for advanced violinists? Thank you. Alex, I don't have specific exercises. What I would do, again, I never, okay, so here am I. I do like exercises. I think exercises are very important because they isolate problems, correct? They isolate problems or challenges that we have, right? And then we can just hone those and focus on them, and we're not distracted by music and a lot of notes. And so, that's what exercises are for. So if somebody has a problem with a certain thing, like maybe string crossings, then I would do string crossings, maybe as a warm-up. I personally never liked doing any specific warm-up exercises for myself, even from early age. I'm just not a natural exercise person. even though I do give a lot of exercises to my students, and I did to them too. But if I have a choice, I would make an exercise, which I do now. I have choice all the time because I'm a grown-up violinist. So I know that, okay, I have this difficult passage here, in like a concerto, and I will go to that passage and I will play that on open strings, and then immediately by memory the same thing on open strings, and I will work on my open string connection, and that will be my warm-up. You see what I mean? So that's what I will do. Specific exercises on open strings only if somebody has a problem, like coordination, they put left hand and everything goes out of the window, then I would do whatever is necessary on open strings first. Yeah. Just long bows, shorter bows, martelets, whatever. But it's also important to do, I would use scales, right? Very quickly, like one position scales, because it's not the same. The response is not the same as on open strings as well. So there it goes. Jonas, actually, yeah, I have to be careful. Oh, let's see how many questions. I think I will try to be fast because I have to finish soon. Could I do a lesson that shows how to practice chords, close and slow motion time? Thanks, from Casablanca, Morocco. As I said, I do have I have a video on chords, so I would recommend you watch it there since we're short on time anyway. Maria, I totally understand English. Yeah, totally get it. Okay. What is the most fun, pleasing orchestral pieces for violin in your opinion? Pleasing orchestral pieces for violins? Oh, you mean, I don't know. Depends. For some it will be the easier pieces, for some it will be the harder pieces. It's very much your taste. Jelly, hello, greetings from Amsterdam. Hello, I have a very simple basic question regarding how we support the violin. Do you think we should support the violin predominantly left hand, or as it's always about balancing left hand shoulder, shoulder and chin? You know what? The violin is supported here for sure, because otherwise why would we put it there, right? So there is element of support. I'm playing with shoulder rest. So since I play with shoulder rest, it's also supported by the shoulder rest as well. So I have 3 support points because I use shoulder rest or shoulder pad or whatever. But when I played without shoulder rest, when I tried to switch, and I did switch, it was supported here and in the hand, in between the fingers. So with the shoulder rest, it's like three places. That's pretty much. But you can vary. You can vary when you do one more or whatever. So, for instance, when I go to higher positions from here, even though I use shoulder rest, I don't do this. I will just actually take my hand, the violin on my thumb, and will part. My shoulder rest will part with my body. So basically I will be shoulder restless on the higher notes here. And then when I go back, I will allow it, instead of using this or shifting in a different way, I will allow this to happen, when I actually put it on the shoulder rest. So that's what I do. But it is very individual. And Igor Menuhin played absolutely just only thumb and collarbone. It's amazing. But he was Igor Menuhin too. Started my meal from a bachelor degree, but I still like to hear an opinion from you. Well, here you have my opinion. I'm glad. I've been experiencing lots of my pain on my shoulder and neck, but how now I start to learn to support violin with left hand, although I use, yes, that's very good. It's very good thing. You also may try to play without it. So also, again, if you want any specific consultation, you can just reach out to me and we can see, maybe we can set up a lesson or something. Twinkle variations, yeah, well, that one. Anthony, hello. I know you faculty Green Mountain. Could you talk about that program and other chamber music festivals? Anthony, you know what? I don't think I will. Well, yeah, I used to. I was on faculty in Green Mountain, but it's I have to be really fast, saying things fast. It's a chamber music program. There are some chamber music camps, festivals in the United States, and then and some orchestral ones, and some that mix both. Okay, but each festival kind of is predominantly one or the other. And the Green Mountain is chamber music, like it says in the title. So there's no orchestra at all. So yeah, there is a lot of playing in the quartets and chamber music in there, in addition to private lessons, and no orchestra. So that's what it is. And that one, and Killington Music Festival, Manchester Festival in Vermont, and quite a few others. Kneisel Hall, excellent one. Taos is one of the top ones in this category. The bow is moving at the next. Okay, I understand the bow is moving at the next, and it shouldn't. How to do good intonation when doing the harmonic vibrato? I don't know what that means. I'm so sorry, Shirley. Okay. Mozart name, music's the game. How do you introduce a new student to the violin? What are the basics? Watch my basics video, please. Watch my basics video. I have basics for the right hand. I have basics for the left hand. That's all I can tell you right now. How I increase accuracy of on the violin notes. Yeah, I did talk about this earlier today. So if you weren't here, please rewatch and you will know. Do you feel the sound from a violin is mostly the result from the violin, wood, or the strings, or is it all 50-50? It's wood, it's the violin, strings, and also the other 50 actually is not that. It's your production of tone. It's our production of the tone. So it's how we produce the sound, and then the violin and the strings. So violin would be more important than strings in the ratio. In my opinion. So basically, you cannot spoil Strat by putting it like lesser strings on it. They can spoil it, but not too much. But if you don't have good sound production, no Strat will work for you. Okay, so we're out of time. We're out of time. I have to finish and go on to my next adventure here with next students. You're very welcome. You're all very welcome. I was glad to be here. It was really good to answer your questions. And please, again, if you haven't subscribed yet, do subscribe and like. It's important that we keep running. And I will do another live stream, and I'll answer more of your questions. If you want to get in touch with me, my email will be, we will put it in description. I think there's description to live streams, right? Anyway, it's under my videos. There's always my email, the one that you can email me with the questions, all right? So goodbye, everybody.